Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarottam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjalimanatosmi laye sambodhayet chittam vikshiptam shamayet punaha sakashayam vijaniyat samapraptam na chalayet. We have come to a very important stage in our study of the second chapter of the Yoga Sutra, where Patanjali Maharshi has created a template and a standard for a yogi. And then the yogi also must be able to actually recognize and identify that he has made a progress in his sadhana, because this is Saadhana Paada. So in the 27th sutra of the second chapter, he says, Tasya saptadha pranta bhumihi prajna. So the meaning is Tasya. Tasya means his, whose. It is of the yogi who has gone through and committed himself to Kriya Yoga, and then he has discovered what are the kleshas, and then he has also discovered that what is to be done for future to avoid the dukkha of the future. And he has also created a methodology by which he should create a lifestyle by which his future dukkha is never happens. In short, he has achieved a level of Jivan Mukti, a liberation while alive. And he can also be called as Sthitaprajna Lakshana. And this Sthitaprajna Lakshana is identified in different ways in different scriptures. A very interesting observation in this presentation is, while all the other scriptures, when they say something about the nature or lakshana of a liberated person, they also quantify it and they also give a list of qualities. But strangely, Patanjali simply gives a number, saying there are 7 stages. And he does not tell us what those 7 stages are. That is very, very intriguing. If he did not want to say what is the various lakshanas, and he wants it to be something that he wants to leave it to a teacher, so that the teacher can customize what the lakshana is for his student, he need not have given the number. He could have simply said, Tasya pranta bhumihi prajna. That means his state is prakrishtaha, superior, excellent, bhumihi, that state or avastha. And that avastha is pranta bhumihi, anta bhumihi. Anta means that which completely dissolves the dukkha resulting out of engagement from the world. In other words, nivritti. So Sadashiva Brahmendra, a very great sage, gives us an etymology for the word pranta bhumi. Prakarshena antaha nivrittihi palatvena yasam ta bhumayaha avasthaha pranta bhumayaha. It's not a very difficult Sanskrit. I'll just parse it for you. Prakarshena antaha. That means perfectly ends, perfectly terminates. That means it will never come back. Of what? Of the dukkha. The dukkha in future will never come back. Nivritti is relief. The relief of the future dukkha happens, and it will never come back and to haunt us with the dukkha. Because of that outcome, phala, a person is in a state of mind. In other words, that state of mind a yogi has achieved so that no dukkha of the future will bother him. This Krishna also talks about it. Gurunapi na vichalyate. However serious the dukkha comes, the person is not disturbed. He could have left at that. But he said 7. So why did he use this number 7? Is one question. Then something has ended perfectly. So what has ended perfectly is the second question. The third question is what exactly is the phala? Fourth question. Then as a corollary to this study, you might have noticed that so far we demonized Prakriti. We said Prakriti has got 3 gunas, Prakriti is the one who causes confusion, Prakriti is the one who causes dukkha, there is rajastamo gunas, then you have to get sattva guna, and for the sake of sattva guna you have got to keep a screen. So we talked about the this Patikalinga and all that. That means, what are we trying to do here? We are demonizing Prakriti itself. Is it proper? Should we condemn the world? Another question. So these are some of the questions I want to throw open today for discussion. And then we will see how to understand this sutra. Any one of you can unmute. And then here is the direction that I suggest. One is how the second chapter starts with the definition of Kriya Yoga. And then how do you understand this Kriya Yoga? And what does this Kriya Yoga resolve? A clue there is Panchakleshas. And by resolving of these Panchakleshas, how a person becomes a Jnani. And then, so please share your thoughts on the development of the yogi from the time he realizes that sadhana is required to remove the Panchakleshas, and how does he discover. So a little bit of a conversation. I welcome any one of you can please unmute and share your thoughts. Of course, we'll start with Hari. I'm sure you would have thought through this.
Yeah, my thinking process as I came to this point was looking back and the way he was constructing until that point. His foundation was obviously the Panchakleshas. He talked about the Panchakleshas, avidya, asvida, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. These 5 we are usually not aware of them. Even though they exist, we are not necessarily aware of these Panchakleshas. And it's one way to overcome is to know, to be aware that this is my raga which is working, this is my dvesha which is working, this is my abhinivesha which is pushing me here. That prajna is not there with us. So I was thinking that there are like 5 prajnas that he was Pradabhumi that he was talking about, saying it moves through those 5 as things roll, we are able to see it. And underlying that, he talked about karmashya, saying hey, this is coming because of the karmashya reason. And again, we are unaware of what karmashya is, the one reason which is giving us. So that's the 6th prajna that we don't have as of today. And then he talked also about the Sarupa. Drashtu Sarupa, he also talked about saying Drishya Sarupa. Even in Drishya, Drishya Viveka, even after that, they say here is the Sarupa of the Drashtu, which is also we are not aware of. So when I counted the 7, I was thinking of these as the 7, saying that if we have this knowledge, then we have a perfect knowledge. Because otherwise our awareness is always consumed by the vrittis. by the transaction with the world, our actions and our reactions to it, our thinking process, we plan forward. Our awareness is always consumed by these things, or our own identities that we have. But we are never taking a critical, subjective look at these seven. So when he came to this Saptada, I was thinking that he was kind of summarizing whatever he had taught up to this point between Panchakleshas, Karmashaya, and the Surupa, and the seven. I mean, I saw different commentaries, and Vyasa had a different interpretation, and everybody had a different interpretation of seven. And my logical way, I was trying to connect. This made sense to me, so just sharing that thought.
That's true. There is so much of semantics and argumentation, and sometimes it is so obscure also, including the commentary of Vedavyasa. Of course, about Atma Swarupa, the technical term we can also say Viveka Khyati. Viveka Khyati. So that's the seventh step. That's why this studying Yoga Sutra is like climbing a mountain. And then coming to this stage of Saptada Prajna is like climbing a mountain. So I'm reminded of our visit to Ahobilam. I'm sure our friends from Andhra would have, Andhra and Telangana would have definitely visited Ahobilam. And then when we went there, it's an interesting climb. There is no well-defined steps like you would see in Tirupati or in some of the other shrines where you can actually steep though, but still you have well-defined steps. Whereas in Ahobilam, when we visited, there are no defined steps. It is just there is a pathway, and then they have roughly cut some place where you can keep your step so you can climb. And there are some places where you almost to your height you have got to climb the step. And then of course you reach the top of the Ahobila mountain. Patanjali's Yoga Sutra is something similar to that. We come across some easy steps. Raga Dvesha, easy to find, easy to discover. Because the moment we give it a label, where, oh yeah, I've got attachment to my child. Yes, I have got an aversion to become sick. Because it can be, Dvesha can be of any scope. So, therefore, all the systematization has been there. And then suddenly, Patanjali Maharshi lets us by telling, here are the Saptada Bhumis, and then opens it for a lot of interpretation. So the reason why I requested all of you to give an input is whatever the commentators write is what they see. But what do we see with our own life experience? That's what I'm very eager to hear from you. Rao Garu, you have unmuted, wanted to say something.
And I'm trying to understand this Yoga Sutras by a simple way, how to analyze, how to interact with the world. I was reading another small book. It's called Introduction to Advaita Vedanta by Swami Paripurnananda, I think. He is also mentioning this in the similar terms. Our mind is modified by our previous experiences, and we always see the world the way mind dictates us to see, but which doesn't give us a clear picture of what we see. The only way we come out of it is to unwind the ways the mind is using its ways and take a fresh look. So that's what I think is yoga is about, to unwind your mind and have a fresh approach, and then don't get attached to your previous ways. Perfect example I can see in history as well as our recent past is a Buddha, whom I consider him as a perfect yogi. From the description so far, I understand, and I take him as a guide, as an example what he did in such a particular situation, how he avoided dukkha, and what he taught to the people. That's the maximum I understand from this conversation so far.
Anybody else? Your thoughts? So let's go to a second part of my own inquiry that I shared with you is we have looked at Prakriti as something that is hurting us, as Prakriti as the source of the of future dukkha, past dukkha, present dukkha. Therefore, should we demonize Prakriti, or if we don't, then what is the advantage of Prakriti? What does it do in our coming to this state of prajna? How can we leverage Prakriti? So that would be a next question to all of you to consider. So just to give a little bit of a framework, again, Prakriti, let's know how do we define. Actually, Prakriti is what consists of objects, because it's only by means of looking at objects, either objects which are gross or subtle in nature. Even a thought is an object because you can objectify. So all objects create experience. And this experience also have got one or more of three qualities, the rajastamo gunas. And the qualities in terms of psychology that we can talk about is where there is clarity. We see something with very clearly, unmistakably, and therefore there is sattva is there. Then we also see that objects create motion, mobility, activity, which is technically called as rajas. And then we also see some amount of inertia. So that is how the world presents itself to us through the objects. And I don't see the world which is not falling in one of these three. So can we conclude that the world's evolution is constituted by these three, of these three? But then we have also me, which is the subject matter of Yoga Sutra, which is my mind, in conjunction with the senses. And that's interacting with these physical worlds. So what does my mind do is, I think that the universe exists so that I can experience the world and I can learn from it, only to be liberated from that. Is this a lesson that the world teaches us by posing dukkha to us? Is something I would like you to share your thoughts. The role of the world, either in creating dukkha or in removing dukkha. What drives my question is, again, the previous sutra where we studied drushtyayoho samyogaha dukkha hetuhu. So my whole question, parsing of that sutra, based on that I'm raising this question: should we charge nature as the cause of my dukkha? Any thoughts?
Ashwat Garu, the way I understand Prakriti is, we as human beings are a part of Prakriti, including our manas and intellect is Prakriti.
Right.
The only thing which is not Prakriti and Purusha is our Atma. So, the way we think, the way our mind thinks is a cause of concern, and it might give us dukkha. And the whole purpose of Yoga Sutra here, I think, is how do we control the mind and start looking inside rather than out into the Prakriti. When I say inside, into the Atma rather than the Prakriti.
That is true. But still, Yashwant Garu, isn't Prakriti indispensable, or is Prakriti inevitable?
So if I have to exist, if Atma has to exist, there has to be a body. If the body has to flourish or nourish, Prakriti is essential. So Prakriti is very, very essential, and it's like a exam test. Like Prakriti is nice, and it is pulling us towards go play in the playground, and the Atma is saying, yes, you can play, but you should come back to the classroom.
Right.
So in Telugu, without Paggalu, we can't win Pantalu. So Prakriti is one of those things which keeps on eluding us to get involved, while we should train our mind to look inside and not be tempted by what Prakriti offers.
So, in other words, it is the limitation of the mind engaging itself with the Prakriti that causes dukkha, and not Prakriti itself. So, do I summarize your thoughts properly?
Yes.
So, go ahead.
To expand on what Yashwant Garu is saying, there are circumstances depending upon our samskaras, vasanas, our genetic predisposition. Different people react with this Prakriti as differently. We cannot just say Prakriti is a demon. For example, when Rama was supposed to become the king next day, when he was told to go to Aranyas, then because he is a yogi, his predisposition, his vasanas, his kamsaras are different from Lakshmana. He said, okay, just as he took becoming a king and going to Aranyas with the same attitude, he reacted with Prakriti the same way. Whereas Lakshmana said, this old man is becoming senile, let him put in a jail. Yesterday he says you are king, and everybody in the kingdom says that's the correct thing to do. Now he changed his mind because of his moha towards his wife. He's not acting right. So Lakshmana reacted differently. All the people in the kingdom, the various queens, every one of them, Mandara, everybody reacted to the same circumstances differently. So I think to a largest extent, even though we can change in our life with sadhana, we came with all this karmic glue around us. We have built up so many identities which are false.
So that says, the way I understand your point is that the multifarious presentation of how the Prakriti presents itself, my looking at the Prakriti is only a part of it. In other words, I see only that part of the Prakriti which I want to see, and not a complete view. So that means I have not developed the skill of seeing Prakriti as it is, but I only see in the limitations of my own mind and intellect. So, in other words, can we say that one of the levels of prajna, the saptadha prajna, we will try to evolve our own vision of what these 7 stages of prajna is. So the can we say that this prajna, one of the prajnas is where I am able to see the entire universe in toto and not in parts and segments, saying and then identifying this is what I like and this is what I don't like, and that thus resolve the raga dvesha. Is that something that we can conclude that can I see the Prakriti in its limitless myriad moving presentation as is, and getting the skill of looking at Prakriti in that holistic way is one of the aspects of Prakarsha Prajna.
Patanjali himself says Prakriti as a means for attachment as well as liberation. He has already said that before too. So he's looking at saying that the way you look at it is what matters. And the nature of the Purusha is Ananda itself. There's no other nature for the Purusha itself. That Ananda appears as Sukha or Dukkha is only in that interaction with Prakriti. So Prakriti becoming that cause or anything, demonizing Prakriti is not any meaning to it. If you think about it, because Prakriti is there for the purpose of satisfying the purpose of the Purusha. Is that Prakriti itself is there? It's understanding where that disassociation is the one which needs to happen because of the not understanding the purpose of Prakriti is the one what causes all the issues.
So our actually debate about the sattva rajastama gunas and then these gunas causing the distortion of the prism metaphor which we took, all of these things are also the cause for dukkha. And therefore, if we can somehow look at the entire universe as with a sakshi bhava, then that self which simply exists to observe the Prakriti, and at that point of time another level of prajna is unfolded in the chitta of the yogi. Can we conclude like that? So when go ahead, Hari, you have something to say.
No, I finished.
Yeah. So when that purpose of Prakriti has been satisfied, that is the self or the drashta is trained to look at the entire Prakriti without interjecting the limiting factors that we talked about, including of the sattva rajas tamo gunas of the buddhi itself, then the purpose of the Purusha is fulfilled. So when the purpose of the Purusha is fulfilled, the sense of fulfillment is another level of the prajna. The sense of tripti, the sense of fulfillment, the sense of saying that I have learned whatever I have to learn from the Prakriti. In this analysis of what is to be avoided, dukkha, then what is the means to avoid dukkha, the hanopaya. So the 4 concepts that we talked about in our last class, having achieved that, the self or the Purusha rests. So the experience of that restfulness of the Purusha in the buddhi can we conclude that it is another level of prajna. Because again, Bhagavad Gita also says that when all this happens, saha achiram shantim adhigacchati. Of course, my statements are not out of the blue, but also I've been connecting it with Bhagavad Gita, with the Upanishadic thinking. And then, of course, since Yoga Sutra is a purely secular text, but there is no reason why we should not incorporate our own philosophical ideas from Upanishad and the Bhagavad Gita, because it's our personal journey. So, it narrows down to say that avidya is actually responsible, and so removal of avidya is, we can say, is wisdom. It's more that we are not learning anything new, but we are removing the confusion that is there in us. That is probably what we have achieved in the study so far. It is not that we are not already liberated, not that we are not pure already, not that we are immortal already. Nityoham, Shuddhoham, Muktoham. And the experience in the wakeful, aware mind is one of the states of this prajna. So, suppose we try to enumerate conceptually the 7 states of Saptada Prajna, even to become aware of our karma. Because again, going back to the teaching of the Gita and the Upanishad, we see that the karma seems to be the source. Karma is really the demon and not the Prakriti is demon. Kama esha, krodha esha. Though it is coming out of rajas of Prakriti, still it is not a product of Prakriti, but it is how I have used Prakriti. So even the first stage of prajna is probably just becoming aware that karma is actually the cause for all spiritual misery that we have around us. So, but this karma, not all karma is terrible, because there is also a Shuddha karma. There is the Parishuddha karma. Shuddha karma is where we actually conduct our lives according to dharma. And in the boundary of dharma, artha and kama is also experienced. Dharmat arthascha kamascha bhavati, says Bhagavan Vedavyasa. But then within dharma, whatever pursuit of desire that I do is Shuddha kama. Parishuddha kama is where even that pursuit is done with no non-attachment, where we call it as a nishkama karma, which becomes parishuddha kama. So when I am able to actually control my body and senses, to develop from an ordinary kama to identify that there is a Shuddha kama and there is a Parishuddha kama, that awareness is probably the first stage of a prajna. And for that, of course, Yama Niyama, the Ashtanga, he introduces, because it has to come translate into sadhana. Because without translating it into sadhana, a mere theoretical knowledge is only going to give us a theoretical satisfaction, not a real comfort. So then, when we recognize and classify, here is Ashuddha Kama, here is Shuddha Kama, here is Parishuddha Kama. And the second stage of prajna is where, suppose I am able to filter the ashuddha kamas, however profitable it is to me in the near future or in the um, in a long time. If I am able to do that, then I may be in that second stage of prajna, of viveka, of discrimination. So that could be a thought that I am going to list every day what are all my kamas. And in this list of kama, which is Shuddha kama, which is Ashuddha kama, which is Parishuddha kama, and then I will try to steer away myself from the Ashuddha kama, at least towards Shuddha kama, and then so that I prepare myself for Parishuddha kama. Then what happens? We should expect that our raga dveshas, which have got enormous amount of potential and kinetic power, extraordinary power is there, and that power is going to become less and less. The drive is going to become more simple and more easy. No obstacles in the driving of our life in the path. When you are actually driving on a surface street to go to your destination, two things happen. One is you are slow, and the second thing is you have to stop at every red light and every stop sign and restart again. And of course it is good as long as we keep our direction, it is fine. But if you are on a freeway, then the beauty of the freeway is you don't have the stop sign, you don't have the red light. You actually reach your destination much faster. So the obstacles of intermediate stops and red lights are removed, which are the Ashuddha kamas, which take away enormous amount of our time and energy in our path towards prajna. So the second level of prajna is where we recognize and remove such desires that cause future suffering. Anything. So say for example with an adult child, the adult child says that I am going to do this, and even if I don't like it, even if I don't disapprove of it, there are some point at which you say, okay, you do what you want. You are an adult, you are a person capable of taking charge of your life, so you have to do it, but at the same time be aware that you have to be responsible for the consequences also. If we take charge of our adult child's life and all errors and mistakes, how can we avoid dukkha? So the second prajna is where we recognize what is it that causes us dukkha, and if that cause can be removed, if that cause can be avoided, to avoid that heyam dukkham anagatam is the second step of the prajna that I identify in this list. Then the third level of prajna, which again our shastras talk about, is Chandogya Upanishad gives us a clue. Na alpe sukham yad bhuma tat sukham. So what is really sukha? Whichever is limited, whichever is finite, they do give some amount of sukha, no doubt, but it does not give atyantika sukham, or a sukham that is permanent and that is forever. So this story from the Chandogya Upanishad, which we have seen several times, is where Yajnavalkya Maharshi's wife, Maitreyi, weighs the relative merits of joining her husband in the study of the self, in the contemplation on the self, and compares that project with maintaining a large estate that he was trying to give. Now please think about this for a minute. You inherit $1 billion estate. And when you inherit this estate, you inherit all the headaches relating to that estate. So yeah, at some point of time in our life, I'm not recommending this if you are under 65 years old, because when you are under 65 years old, you have to do this artha kama in the boundary of dharma. But when the time comes for you to do the nivritti, at that point of time, the wisdom, the prajna is how much I will get involved with the dominance of artha kama and how much I will withdraw. So Maitreya chooses administration of an enormous wealthy estate of Yajnavalkya. Let me give it up to Katyayani, who has the aptitude to do that. Whereas I don't have an aptitude to do that for the rest of my life. So I am going to come with you, O Yajnavalkya, because Atmanastu Kamaya Sarvamidam Priyam Bhavati. It is because of the Atman, whatever is there becomes my beloved. So therefore, the third understanding is where the mind actually moves from a microcosmic understanding of Dharmartha Kama to a cosmic understanding of Dharmartha Kama. The place of Dharma and Moksha in a cosmic level is the third prajna. So when we understand that the world, the nature is there, that the workings of the nature is there, only for the sake of training our mind. What is nature doing? It is giving us enticements, it is giving us sukha, it is giving us some physical comfort, some pleasures, and then it takes it back. You remember in one of the sessions I talked about Dhruva and Narayana conversing. Narayana says, ask me what you want. I'll give you long life. Same question appears in the Kathopanishad. Yama says, I will give you a lifespan of 1,000 years. Then immediately Nachiketa metaphorically responds, saying that you are not giving me forever. If you are giving me a long life, I should become immortal. If you say after 1,000 years I am going to take back your prana, that's no gift. A gift is something you don't take back. Give me that gift which you cannot take back, which is Atmajnana. So in the fourth prajna is where we understand and use the Prakriti and the Sattva Rajas Tamo gunas to experience a alpa sukha and get the prajna to extrapolate the alpa sukha into cosmic sukha, yadbhuma, tat sukham. So that is probably what Yoga Sutra is trying to drive us to go to the fourth level of the prajna. So let us look at the fifth level of the prajna. Until achieving that level of that prajna, then we have things to do. The world is there. My responsibilities are there. Here I have got my children. Their education is not complete. And until their education is complete, until they get married and settle in their life, as a parent, I have got a responsibility. Even though my child is actually a part of Prakriti, it is a part of the world, still I am the cause for their existence in this form, in this Namarupa. And therefore, until such time that they are educated, they are settled, they get married, up to that point, I have a responsibility and therefore I have to do karma. And once that is over, now the understanding is I don't have to do anything. I have no more duties to discharge. And as soon as we say that I have no more duties to discharge, it is not that I don't need the world. Please note this very carefully. The world doesn't need me. Isn't it true? My son, my daughter is educated. My child has got a job. My child has a family. What is the need for my child with regards to me? Need, please note. Love, friendship, care, all those things are depending on their emotional attachment to you. That is all, isn't it? Your emotional attachment to your child may be reciprocated, may not be reciprocated. But the fact is, as far as Arthakama of my child is concerned, I am redundant, isn't it? Any doubt there? I am not needed by them. What does this do to my chitta? What it does to my chitta is it makes my mind humble. We become extremely humble by saying, whatever I have achieved so far, I might have gone to the forest, I might have killed all the Rakshasas, I might have befriended Hanuman and Sugriva, I might have killed Ravana. I have done everything. I have come back. I have established a very stable kingdom. I have transferred the power to my children. And now I will go to Vanaprastha. Going to Vanaprastha is not a rejection of the world. It is only the humility that the world does not need me anymore. And therefore, I become liberated from duties. In other words, I become liberated from karma itself. So when that freedom from karma comes, what is the fifth level of prajna that I get? The fifth level of prajna is, as long as I had to engage with the world, I have done it to the best of my ability. And now I am going to concentrate and focus on my own Atman. So I will turn inward. Nivritti can happen only when we determine that my need for the world is over. And all the yoga must gain the momentum to reach that state of where I will say that hereafter my service to the society is no more critical. Fifth level of prajna. Then we can turn ourselves to the vasanas and the samskaras. Because up to this point, we can only take shelter saying that, why am I conducting my life like this? It is because of vasana. It is because of samskara. It is because of the conditioning. It is because I have got a family. What should I do? I have to take care of them. So a lot of arguments saying that why I cannot withdraw myself into, why I cannot do nivritti, that all of that will get resolved as soon as I say that I have done everything that I have to do for the world. When does Shiva sit in dhyana and meditation? Please think. Kalidasa gives us an insight into this. What does he do? First of all, he will initiate creation. Ya srishti srashturadya. Then he is the one who catches the life-giving water of Ganga, a cascading water of Ganga. All the dukkha and the challenges and the power that Ganga could have caused, he holds it and then lets it go in trickles. Is that not what we do also in our life? When series of difficulties come to your children, health, school, what do they do when you go to work? Who is going to take care of them when they come back from school? They are all cascading Ganga. And what do you do as a householder? You catch all of that. And then only give your children the nourishing waters of Ganga. It trickles to them. So you have done all of that. And the stored impressions and the vasanas at this point of stage, what happens? My children are fine, they are taken care of, they are able to take care of their own children, and I am here all the time blessing. If they want me, I can be with them, unattached. Again, unattached, uninvolved in how they conduct their life also. These are some of the things that we will face. You go and start living with your adult married child with his own or her own child. Their lifestyle is different, their diet is different, the way they think is different. So how should I conduct myself? So that is when we say that I am not going to impose upon the nature, upon the world, my vasanas and samskaras. And there also, if they ask for any advice, you give the advice. Otherwise, naprachataha kasyachit bruyat. Without asking, don't give advice. Nacha anyayena prachataha. Or if they challenge your ideas, you will say, do what you like. Janannapi cha medhavi jadavalloka acharet. What is this state? This state is where nature and its predominance drops off and the weight is taken off my shoulder. And the awareness that the weight of trigunas and the weight of nature is taken off of my shoulder, and that awareness is the sixth level of the prajna in my thought. Then finally, when we reach that state, Atma in the self, Atmaiva, Atmana tushtaha. The person completely rejoices with himself, within himself. Sita prajnas praduchyate. The person becomes one of perfect state of mind. So one other way also, you can contemplate on these 7 levels of prajna is distributing the ideas of sthita prajna lakshana given in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and then connecting it to those 7 stages. That also can be done. I think Patanjali Maharshi deliberately, sometimes against the principle of sutra composition, he did not give us a list. He himself did not give us a list. It is because he wants us to design a lifestyle of our own. And we can do it in a religious manner, Dvaita, Advaita, Vishishta, Advaita. You can do all these things in the context of pure bhakti. In fact, some of these points, no, though not directly, indirectly, Hari has presented in his presentation of Narayaniyam. He has brought some of these, as I said, in an indirect manner, he has already pointed out some of these experiences. And Narayaniyam, this does show that path. And so does Bhagavad Gita show the path. And so does the Shvetashvatra Upanishad shows the path. Because in Shvetashvatra Upanishad also the whole conversation starts with discussing what is this world, what is this chakra, why is this hamsa, that is the individual jiva, is trapped in this chakra, brahmyate, brahma chakre. So probably these were all the ideas. He doesn't want us to condemn nature. He wants us to develop our own strategy. As long as we create a step-by-step process to reach that state of kaivalya. So we can also start with the body, for example, yama. We can start with the discipline, niyama. We can also start with the withdrawal. We can also go with the dhyana. So all those methods, whatever method works, ultimately to realize the self, he leaves it to us. That's why I opened the floor. So please keep thinking, and then if you get any ideas about what you think would be the most effective 7-step process in the context of our life here, what do you think, and how do you think, would you design? And that would be something that we can discuss whenever you are ready. Next, we enter in our next class with the Ashtanga Yoga. That will any comments, please unmute yourself. And Naina, any observation?
I was thinking about more basic entry level kind of a thought of what the Prakriti is. Yes, couple of things is Prakriti is not going to be good or bad, as I think many of them already said. It is our interaction with it, and when you say our interaction, it's the same Prakriti can elicit a different response from different people. That again, I think somebody also said that it's coming from your own vasanas and backgrounds. So what could be a good experience for somebody will not be such a good experience for another person, right? So Prakriti itself is not good or bad. It is our interaction with it or coming from our experiences, that is what makes it. But then I still have to think through the 7 stages of prajna. I think a good exercise, as you were pointing out, is to go back to Bhagavad Gita, see the sthita prajna qualities, and then refer to the 7 stages. I just noted down the 7 things that you were saying, but if I can go back and refer to that and then kind of map it to this, then probably the 7 stages become more, I think, more relevant to me. Otherwise, it's more of,
Otherwise, it is theoretical.
Yes, it is very theoretical. These are when you say equanimity. So where does equanimity for Sthita Prajna? So where would that fall in these 7 stages? Is it at the intellectual level or emotional level? You kind of sometimes know, yes, I need to be equanimous to a certain situation, but do I really internalize it? So there can be different stages of the Sthita Prajna. I mean, that's what I think. One is just purely intellectual, but to apply and at a more emotional level is completely different.
Sure. Look forward to listen to you once you have thought through.
Okay.
Sure.
Sure.
The only other thought that came to me when I look at the words that he has used, he doesn't call this as a gradation. He calls this as 7 domains. So it is as if somebody will be traversing these 7 domains. Like the prajna will always be traversing these domains, as opposed to getting somewhere and leaving that or going to somewhere else. But the maturation process is definitely important. That's something we all need to be aware, work towards. But I'm probing Patanjali's mind. One, he didn't try to list it because he thought it's already obvious. He thinks something is obvious because he has already talked about it. So it has to be buried somewhere where he has talked about it. Second thing is that because he uses the word Pranthabhumi very uniquely, saying that these are domains in which awareness is going to traverse through. He's definitely pointing to that traversal wherever our awareness seems to get caught. And even for an enlightened person, still need to be traversing those awareness. But we walk through them unaware, and a realized person goes through them with awareness. And that's the only way to become Drishimatra. He calls it, when somebody becomes, Krishna becomes only Drishimatra, then that awareness comes across all the domains. Whereas we are sleepwalking through most of these domains all the time.
Correct. There's an interesting parallel to the Saptapadi mantras in the wedding. There are also 7 steps. So in those Saptapadi mantras, the first 6 mantras are well defined. The 7th mantra, there is no definition. In the 7th mantra, it simply says, you become my friend. Whereas in the first 6 mantras, there is a definite process saying that we will walk together, ekam ishe, for the sake of food and nourishment. So there is a definite purpose why I am taking the first step with you. Dve urje, for the sake of growth, definite purpose. But when it comes to the 6th, he says, Shad Rutubhyo, for the sake of we will be together in all the seasons, metaphoric seasons. There will be summer, there will be winter, there will be harsh winter, there will be harsh summer. So I will be with you and all. So very well quantified. First 6 steps. The 7th step, he simply says, Sakha Saptapada Bhava. In all my journey, you become my friend. So this idea is that whether it is Yoga Shastra, whether it is the Karma Kanda ritual, or whether it is philosophy, this Bhuhu Bhuvaha Swaha Maha Janaha Tapaha Satyam. So when Vedanta is talking about these 7 realms, again the Satyaloka is not defined clearly. Satyaloka is an open-ended aspect. You go there, you get liberated. So what exactly do you mean by getting liberated? So in other words, this journey towards perfection is like the reaching the horizon. We keep walking and walking and walking. So when do we rest? So that is where we have to again look at probably tada drashto swarupe avasthanam. So if we have finally rested in ourselves, probably the journey is over. Probably.
So I had one question on what you just mentioned, Ashutar. So if the journey is so individualistic, right? It is individualistic. So when you say we go to that horizon, and then the journey is over. So that horizon can be different for different person, because if you're looking at contentment, right? So somebody may be content at certain things and some at a certain stage, and somebody may be content at something else. I'm not talking just materialistic content, but the happiness or whatever that we are looking at. So that journey or that horizon, so to say, is different for different people. Is that right? Or my understanding, am I mistaken in that?
No, it is again. When you go back to study the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, you will see the conclusion is also there. It is unique to individual, but it is universal in its quality. Apuryamana vachala pratishtham samudramapa pravishanti yadvat. So just as everything has become the ocean, and the oceanness is both individual and it's also universal.
Right. So is that why then Satyaloka will not have, the Satya state, the last state, will also not have any definition? Because the minute you say definition, you're saying everybody has to be there. So if it is open-ended, each one has their own level of where they think that is.
Precisely. As soon as you say it needs a definition, then there is duality, right?
Right.
The definer and the defined. Mm-hmm. So that duality ends.
Ends, right.
It ends. And if it ends for the individual, as far as the individual is concerned, there is no duality at all.
Yeah. Correct.
So when you have reached the Satyaloka, for you, whether I have reached the Satyaloka or not is not in the context of your contemplation.
Right.
It is not that you are indifferent to the others who are not enlightened. It is not that you are indifferent. It only means that you are not proactively going out and say, okay, I'm going to bring you wisdom. So a parivrajaka, a sannyasi, there are two kinds of sannyasis. There is a sannyasi who is a parivrajaka. A parivrajaka is one who goes from place to place to place, and then he sits in the mantapa outside the town, and then he will start teaching people, whoever comes there. And that state of parivrajaka state also ends for a sannyasi, when the person completely withdraws himself. So at one point of time, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says, Vivekananda, you take over from here. That's it. So when we will know when we have reached that state, right? We will know when we have reached that state when the world does not suffer because of my non-existence in the world. World will go on very well. And I do not cling on to the world either. You may cling on to the world for basics, that is all. Little bit of food, a little bit of clothing, a little shelter. Nothing more than that. Even there, a yogi in the Himalaya can live in a cave. So that is a choice of lifestyle. But what we are talking about is the mental framework, because Yoga Shastra is a psychological subject. Thank you. So, we'll continue to contemplate.